Weather affects our daily lives, from the sun brightening up our day to a light shower making things feel fresh. But when weather begins to turn severe, it can affect our lives in a very serious way, such as the case 2 years ago in Jamestown and Stutsman County. At the Jamestown and Pipestem Dams reservoir, levels reached all-time highs, forcing the Army Corps of Engineers to raise discharge rates from the dams to a record 3,200 cubic feet per second. However, thanks to the dams, it is estimated that $70 million worth of damage to the city of Jamestown was prevented. But upstream of Jamestown, the James River flooded bridges and created quite the predicament for many farmers needing to get to their fields. Farmers such as Kim Lees, who is the mayor of Buchanan.
I'm about as old as the Jamestown Reservoir myself, and in 2009 was the first time this bridge ever went underwater, and stayed that way for a couple months. There's a lot of transportation on this bridge since it's the only bridge between Jamestown and Highway 9 in order to cross the water here. There's a couple of smaller low water bridges that go underwater every spring. I know in my case it was real interesting. I live in Buchanan, I farm on the east side of the river. My 7-mile trip every morning turned into 36 miles. And just a lot of time involved. A lot of planning, make sure you have things on the right side because, I forgot that. Well, you got to drive. That's a 70-mile round trip now to go back and get it. It was frustrating, but what do? You deal with it. Made for a long spring.
In order to get to his farm, Lees had to drive his equipment over 10 miles south through downtown Jamestown. Yet while a road might shorten our trip from point A to point B, the Sheriff's Department makes sure that they are safe to drive on. We sat down and talked with Stutsman County Sheriff Chad Kaiser, who told us a little more about his department's role in keeping roads safe.
We do see some damage from the roads, not necessarily due to overland flooding or roads being inundated with water, but they do cause soft spots in the road, which do end up crumbling the asphalt, which can make it unsafe for motorists. We will notify the road department and have them come out and do some signage, or may even close the road if necessary. Right now we do use the law enforcement center. Our dispatch, our 911 dispatch, has all the information of the closed roads. What I tell people in the county is for right now the roads are always changing. We're continuing to get some more moisture. The roads that you used to drive on, might have went to town on, when you come back they might be either water over the road, or it might be the culvert might be washed out. You always got to be looking and notice the changing of the conditions of the road.
Because they live in such rural areas, sometimes the only physical link a farmer has to the outside world is a road. Yet roads flood. Do you ever need to rescue people stranded by flooding?
This year so far, we've been pretty good. The flooding that we've had has been controlled. We haven't had any real big issues as far as our department, as far as the flood goes. If we had any overland flooding where somebody called for assistance, we would do whatever we could to help them out in that situation. We would get any type of equipment out there to get them through in case of an emergency, or if an emergency did arise, we would get to them one way or another.
What are the county's plans for safety when or if the roads flood?
Safety, for one, is some of that relies on us. We try to get out as soon as possible if there is any flooding or overland flooding. This year we haven't had a lot of problems with that as previous in 2009, where we had a lot of overland flooding that came basically overnight.
But more than just roads, flooding can take over homes and land.
For those who experience it, of course, it's not a very pleasant thing because you wind up having a lot of damage to your home if it's your home being flooded.
I have a farm out in northwest of town, and there's been flooding that's taken some of the farmland out there.
Some of it went underwater, and water went over our road. We had to build our road up a little and stuff, but all in all, it wasn't nearly as bad as what some people had. So,
a lot of acreage that's permanently water or so saturated you can't farm it. And then there's issues with the soils and everything else.
Loss of homes and land is something many people can relate to across North Dakota. In 1997, the city of Grand Forks was almost completely wiped out due to flooding. The Fargo-Moorhead and Red River Valley area has also experienced some record-setting floods over the past few years. Devil's Lake, which is already at a record high, continues to grow and engulf the countryside. and officials are battling floodwaters in Valley City and Barnes County as well. Without a doubt, flooding affects many things, including some we may not think about right away. People. There's a lot of monetary costs associated with flooding, with damaged buildings and possessions. But would you say there's a human or psychological cost resulting from flooding too?
It kind of varies because, you go to a lot of calls where people are just frustrated with either the loss of their property, loss of getting around easily out in the county.
Lee's has his own way of dealing with the flooding.
You have to work with it, There's nothing you can do about it, so it's like, well, how do we work around this? You just watch the water come up and go down and hope for the best. Cross your fingers.
Lee's notes that he tries his best, but whether it floods or not isn't really up to him.
All I've done is kind of stayed in contact with people in the county and the people from the Corps and the Bureau, trying to get a handle on how much water may come. And they're pretty confident that we'll keep our feet dry here. And I guess it's just what Mother Nature does from here on out.
As we get closer and closer to summer, the chances of flooding should decrease because of the lack of snowmelt. Let's hope the experts are right and that we will stay relatively dry this year. But it never hurts to cross your fingers. In Jamestown, I'm Courtney Oliver.